before Walmart, before Amazon. There was Main Street, where every handshake meant something, and the butcher knew your name. The sidewalks carried the rhythm of daily life, and the sound of a shop bell opening wasn't just business, it was belonging. This was the world that shaped so many childhoods, a world where trust and familiarity guided the pace of every day. Step onto Main Street in the years before the 1970s, and you'd find more than a place to shop. You'd find the heartbeat of a town. The butcher stood behind the counter, apron dusted with flour from wrapping paper, slicing meat for families he'd known for years. The barber's chair spun slowly while men traded stories about the weather or last night's ball game. At the Five and Dime, shelves carried everything from penny candy to sewing needles, and children pressed their noses against glass cases, hoping for a small treat before supper. Each shop wasn't just a storefront, it was a relationship, built on smiles, memory, and names remembered. In those days, the word trust carried weight. A family short on cash could leave with a sack of groceries on a promise to pay next week. Shopkeepers often kept handwritten ledgers, noting debts with confidence that neighbors would make things right. Kids walked alone or in groups, chasing each other down the block, knowing every adult was watching out for them. Parents didn't worry about safety in the same way we do now because the community itself acted as a shield. Evenings on Main Street painted a scene of connection. Families strolled after dinner, stopping to wave through windows or step into a store before closing. The glow of neon signs hummed against brick walls, and laughter from a diner spilled out onto the sidewalk. The town wasn't just where people lived, it was an extension of their homes. Each corner held a memory, each bench a conversation, and each storefront a chapter in the story of belonging. What made it so special wasn't the goods sold or the prices offered. It was the ritual of showing up. Shopping meant pausing to talk, catching up on family news, hearing about who was sick, who was expecting, and who needed a helping hand. Main Street wasn't about speed or efficiency. It was about the rhythm of people's lives moving together, side by side. Looking back now, it's easy to see why this world lives on in memory. The smell of fresh bread from the bakery, the squeak of a door hinge, the warmth of a clerk who already knew what you needed before you asked it all, stitched a sense of identity into the fabric of towns across America. Main Street wasn't just a collection of shops. It was the glue that held communities together. But time doesn't stand still, and neither did America's way of shopping. It started with smaller, bigger stores, bigger parking lots. At first, it was exciting, but it would change everything. The 1960s and 70s brought a new kind of promise to American shoppers: convenience. What once required several stops on Main Street could suddenly be done under one roof. It felt like progress, like stepping into a future where life was easier, faster, and more modern. These larger stores began to rise on the outskirts of towns, where land was plentiful and parking was free. Unlike the narrow sidewalks and angled spots of downtown, there were sprawling lots that could fit hundreds of cars. Families piled into station wagons, drove a few minutes beyond the familiar square, and discovered a shopping world that felt almost limitless. The aisles stretched wider, the shelves reached taller, and the variety seemed unmatched by the little shops they had grown up with. The appeal was undeniable. Lower prices tempted parents trying to stretch household budgets. A single trip could cover groceries, clothing, hardware, and toys. What had once been a daily errand downtown became a Saturday outing to the edge of town. Kids could run through toy aisles while parents compared deals on laundry detergent. Shopping shifted from a ritual woven into everyday life to a planned event, something circled on calendars and anticipated with a sense of novelty. For many, it truly felt futuristic. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, carts rolled smoothly across polished tile floors, and checkout counters moved people along at a pace unheard of in small corner shops. It was a glimpse into a world where choice seemed endless and efficiency became the new measure of success. Shoppers were dazzled not only by what they could buy, but by how quickly and easily they could do it. Yet beneath the glow of progress, something was beginning to fade. The barber who knew your name couldn't compete with the low prices just outside town. The grocer who carried your bags to the car couldn't match the variety stacked high in the new supermarket. Community ties that had once been strengthened with every stop on Main Street began to thin, replaced by transactions with strangers in spaces too large to feel personal. No one noticed the change all at once. It came gradually, folded into the excitement of a new way of living. Main Street still stood, but the pull of convenience was strong, and week by week, car by car, more families found themselves driving away from the heart of town. What began as progress carried a quiet cost. Less connection, less time spent in familiar places, and fewer chance encounters with neighbors. But before the giants claimed the edge of town, they quietly set up shop on Main Street itself. Woolworths had grilled cheese. Jack Penny had creaky floors. Even the chains once felt like home. Before they grew into national giants scattered along highways and malls, these early department stores planted themselves right in the middle of Main Street, alongside the butcher, the barber, and the bakery. For many towns, the arrival of a Sears or a Woolworth didn't feel like an intrusion. It felt like a welcome addition. Their buildings didn't tower over the town or gleam with glass. Instead, they were built to blend in with the brick and mortar of local architecture. Narrow aisles, wooden floors, and tall shelves created a space that felt familiar rather than overwhelming. These stores weren't trying to erase the personality of the town. In many ways, they mirrored it. A child could wander from the five and dime into Woolworth as without feeling like they had left the world they knew. Inside, they carried their own sense of charm. Woolworths was famous for its lunch counters, where grilled cheese sandwiches, milkshakes, and pie slices became part of everyday routines. The counters weren't just about food. They were gathering spots where friends met. Children were treated after school, and tired shoppers took a break before heading home. Sears had its iconic catalog desk, where families could order everything from winter coats to entire prefabricated homes, then pick them up right there on Main Street. Jack Penny, with its polished displays and dependable clothing racks, gave shoppers a sense of stepping into something dependable yet comforting. The people behind the counters made all the difference. These stores hired local clerks and cashiers, young people earning their first paychecks, or neighbors who already knew your family. Even though the names above the doors were national, the experience inside still felt local. You could run into your child's teacher while waiting at the soda fountain, or share a laugh with a neighbor while browsing for shoes. The faces were familiar, and that kept the chains rooted in community life. For many, the stores themselves became places of memory. A first job behind a register, a first date over a shared milkshake, a wedding suit bought at Jack Penny, or a Christmas toy chosen carefully from the Sears catalog. These weren't just transactions. They were milestones, woven into the fabric of growing up in America. People carried an emotional attachment to these places, a sense that they belonged not only to a corporation, but also to the town itself. It's easy to forget now, with the echo of empty malls and shuttered storefronts, that once upon a time these chain stores were seen as cozy, dependable, and almost neighborly. They offered the reliability of a big name without sacrificing the warmth of small-town life. For a while, it seemed like the best of both worlds. But it wasn't long before these beloved names followed the money and the cars. The superstores didn't just sell more. They redefined what shopping meant in America. By the 1980s and 90s, the retail landscape had shifted almost completely. The familiar faces of Main Street were overshadowed by sprawling malls, endless shopping centers, and the rise of the big box store. What had once been small, personal, and rooted in place was replaced by something uniform and massive. built not for character, but for efficiency. These new spaces seemed to appear overnight. Where a stretch of farmland once stood, suddenly there was a shopping plaza with acres of parking and glowing signs visible from the highway. Malls sprouted as enclosed, climate-controlled worlds where entire weekends could be spent wandering from one store to the next without ever stepping outside. The big box stores Walmart, Target, Home Depot spread across the country, each one looking nearly identical to the last. No matter if you were in Ohio or Texas, the experience was the same. At first, the sameness was part of the appeal. Shoppers knew exactly what to expect. Wide aisles, towering shelves, and endless racks of goods promised both speed and abundance. Prices were lower, selections broader, and everything moved faster. The old rhythms of conversation with the shopkeeper or browsing slowly through shelves gave way to a new rhythm: grab, pay, go. Shopping became less about the experience and more about the transaction. Architecture mirrored this shift. Main Street had offered brick walls, creaky wooden floors, and windows designed for looking in. Big box stores replaced them with concrete walls, bright fluorescent lighting, and aisles built for bulk. The buildings themselves became interchangeable boxes, stripped of warmth or memory. They weren't meant to be cherished landmarks in a town's identity. They were designed to be efficient machines for consumption. Yet behind the low prices and endless convenience, something was quietly lost. The chance to know the person behind the counter. The comfort of a store that felt unique to your town. The patience that came with browsing slowly or chatting with neighbors along the way. These things didn't vanish all at once, they eroded, hidden beneath the thrill of saving a few dollars or the ease of finding everything in one place. For many families, the trade-off seemed worth it. Budgets stretched further, shopping became quicker, and a Saturday afternoon at the mall was its own kind of entertainment. But for towns themselves, the cost was steep. The heartbeat of Main Street grew fainter, drowned out by the hum of escalators and the beeping of scanners. The charm of local life gave way to the sterile glow of uniform aisles. And once the giants left, Main Street began to fade store by store, window by window. The barber closed. The bell on the door stopped ringing. And just like that, Main Street went quiet. What had once been the center of daily life slowly emptied, one shop at a time. Some owners retired with no one willing to take their place. Others filed for bankruptcy, unable to keep up with the prices of the chains at the edge of town. And many simply watched the foot traffic disappear until keeping the lights on no longer made sense. Storefronts that had once glowed with familiar signs grew dark. Windows that displayed toys, dresses, or fresh bread became blank glass covered with dust or cardboard. The cheerful hum of conversation gave way to silence, broken only by the sound of passing cars that no longer stopped. Main Street, once alive with neighbors waiting across the street and children darting between shops, became a place people drove past instead of through. The visual decay was striking. Peeling paint on brick facades, empty benches no one sat on, and for lease signs that lingered for years became the new landmarks. What had been the pride of a town began to look forgotten. It wasn't just about the stores closing. It was about what their absence meant. Without the barber, the diner, or the five and dime, towns lost part of their identity, part of the character that had tied generations together. For kids growing up in this new landscape, the loss was even sharper. They never knew the joy of pressing their hands against a candy counter or hearing their name called out by a grocer who had known their family for decades. They didn't have the same places to gather, to celebrate small rituals, to feel the warmth of belonging. Childhood memories that had once been universal became harder to pass down. The emptiness left behind wasn't just physical, it was emotional. Communities no longer had a shared meeting place, a common ground that tied neighbors together. Without Main Street, towns became less personal, less connected. The places that had once created stories and memories became only memories themselves. And so, nostalgia began to take root. People looked back on the warmth that had vanished, remembering the jingling bells, the chatter of familiar voices, the comfort of knowing you belonged somewhere. The loss of Main Street wasn't just about losing shops. It was about losing the heartbeat of community life. But it wasn't just stores we lost. It was something deeper. We gained speed, but lost our stories. Was it really worth it? The March of Progress promised convenience, and in many ways, it delivered. Today, a person can buy groceries, clothes, and gifts in half the time it once took to stroll down Main Street. Shelves are fuller, prices often lower, and choices seemingly endless. Yet in gaining all this efficiency, something far more valuable slipped quietly away. Shopping used to be more than a transaction. It was an interaction. A visit to the grocer meant a friendly greeting, a short conversation, and sometimes even advice on the best cut of meat for Sunday dinner. A stop at the Five and Dime wasn't just about buying thread or candy. It was a chance to catch up on town gossip, to feel part of something larger than yourself. Now, most purchases involve self-checkouts, digital screens, or hurried exchanges with clerks who remain strangers. The rhythm of commerce has shifted from personal to mechanical. The difference is felt in ways that statistics can't measure. Modern shopping is fast, but it's also lonely. Pushing a cart through a superstore or scrolling through an online catalog doesn't carry the same warmth as hearing your name called by a shopkeeper. Transactions have become stripped of memory, leaving behind only the receipt. Where once there was familiarity and connection, now there is silence, efficient, but empty. Traditions and rituals once tied to shopping have nearly disappeared. Families used to walk downtown after church, sharing an ice cream cone or browsing shop windows together. Seasonal events filled Main Street with live holiday displays, summer parades, or even the simple joy of seeing store windows decorated for Christmas. These moments weren't about what people bought. They were about how they felt. In chasing progress, many of those rituals have been erased, leaving little more than convenience in their place. This is the hidden price of progress. The promise of more goods, more speed, more savings came with less meaning, less connection, and less humanity. Shopping is no longer woven into the social fabric of daily life. It has become a task to complete, another line on the to-do list. The experience has been streamlined, but in being streamlined, it has been stripped of its soul. It raises a question worth asking. Was the trade-off fair? We gained choice, but we lost character. We gained speed, but we lost the stories that once came with each purchase. Progress gave us efficiency, but it also left us with emptiness. What once felt like community now feels like consumption. And just when Main Street thought it couldn't get worse, something even bigger arrived. Then came Amazon, and the store in your town became a website. What began in the late 1990s as a curiosity of a few people daring to type in their credit card numbers quickly became a tidal wave. E-commerce exploded into American life, reshaping how we shopped faster than malls ever had. Suddenly, the world's biggest marketplace wasn't down the street or even across town, it was on your computer screen. Amazon led the charge, but it wasn't alone. eBay turned auctions into a global pastime, letting people buy collectibles or used goods from strangers thousands of miles away. Online shopping went from novelty to necessity in a matter of years. By the mid-2000s, the pattern was set. Why drive to a store when you could order from the couch? Why wait in line when a box would appear at your doorstep in 2 days or less? Convenience eclipsed tradition almost overnight. The consequences were devastating for the stores that once anchored American towns. Department store giants like Sears and JCPenney, once synonymous with trust and reliability, crumbled under the weight of changing habits. Toys R Us, once a childhood paradise, was shuttered by the digital tide. Even malls, once bustling temples of the 1980s and 90s, became ghostly echoes of themselves, their food courts half empty, their escalators moving fewer and fewer feet each year. E-commerce wasn't just a competitor, it rewrote the rules. Physical stores had overhead, buildings, staff, utilities. Online retailers had none of those limitations. They could offer lower prices, endless variety, and unmatched speed. Even when stores tried to adapt with websites of their own, they often lagged behind, unable to match Amazon's relentless efficiency. Main Street, which had already been weakened by big box expansion, was pushed closer to the edge. Perhaps the greatest loss wasn't economic but experiential. Shopping in person was about touching fabrics, smelling leather, flipping through books, or hearing the laughter of kids racing to the toy aisle. Online, those sensations vanished. They were replaced by glowing screens, add to cart buttons, and algorithmic suggestions. Everything became frictionless, but also soulless. By the 2010s, the avalanche was undeniable. For many Americans, clicking a button replaced strolling a street. Deliveries replaced conversations. The ritual of shopping had been reduced to a tracking number. But just as it all seemed lost, something surprising began to happen. A new generation is discovering the charm of old storefronts and breathing life into the past. Across America, small towns and forgotten downtowns are stirring awake. What once sat empty brick facades with peeling paint, windows darkened by decades of silence, is finding new life in the hands of people who want more than convenience. They want connection. Restoration projects are reviving the bones of history. Old general stores are being transformed into coffee shops, bookshops, and artisan markets. Abandoned warehouses now house craft breweries or local art studios. Farmers markets are filling town squares again, bringing neighbors face to face instead of screen to screen. The very spaces that once symbolized loss are being repurposed into symbols of resilience. It isn't just economics driving this revival, it's culture. Nostalgia has become a powerful force, not as a longing for the past, but as a guide for the future. Younger generations are rejecting the sterile sameness of big-box stores and rediscovering the beauty of individuality. Shopping at a local bakery or bookstore feels meaningful in a way that two-day shipping never can. It's not about efficiency, it's about experience. This shift is tied to a broader movement, slow living. After decades of racing toward faster, cheaper, and bigger, many people are pausing to savor the smaller things. Handmade goods, farm-to-table food, and community events are no longer relics. They are sought-after luxuries. A Friday night concert in the park or a holiday festival downtown holds more appeal than another trip to the mall. The value of locality has come back into focus. These efforts are not just reviving buildings. They are reviving belonging. The return of town parades, open-air markets, and community gatherings shows that people crave more than transactions. They crave connection, the same kind that once made Main Street the heart of American life. Because no matter how much changes, one truth still holds. Main Street isn't just a place. It's a feeling. And in some towns, it's coming back to life. Even where the windows are still boarded and the sidewalks remain quiet, the memory of what Main Street once meant lingers in the hearts of those who walked it. It was not only about shops or services, it was about belonging. It was about knowing that the world outside might change, but here, you were home. We've traced its journey, the days when neighbors trusted each other across counters, when small chains still felt personal when big boxes promised progress but brought silence in their wake, and when digital convenience nearly erased the rituals of daily life. And yet, even in all that loss, something survived. Main Street lived on in memory, in nostalgia, in the way people remembered the smell of fresh bread or the jingle of a shopkeeper's bell. Today, as farmers' markets bloom where empty lots once stood and old theaters glow with new marquees, we're reminded that Main Street was never truly gone. It waited, it rested, and now, in pockets across America, It's stirring again, not as a copy of the past, but as a bridge between memory and future. Main Street has always been more than wood, brick, and glass. It is America's heart, a heartbeat made of trust, connection, and simple joys. Every creak of an old floorboard, every hand-painted sign, every gathering on a town square is a reminder that progress does not have to mean forgetting. We carry those memories not as burdens, but as guideposts. They tell us what mattered once and what still matters now. Because in the end, nostalgia is not about going backward. It's about holding on to the best parts of who we were and weaving them into who we are becoming. Main Street shows us that community, trust, and belonging are not relics. They are living traditions. And maybe, just maybe, the greatest act of preservation is sharing those memories, keeping them alive in our stories, our choices, and our lives. Main Street never really left. It's waiting for us to walk it again. Share your own Main Street memories in the comments below. What do you remember most?